Welcome, friends. Are you sitting comfortably? Let me take you to the treacherous waters of the Bay of Biscay, where the continental shelf drops away into an abyss so deep that sunlight never reaches its bottom. Local fishermen tell tales of voices calling in the night, of phantom ships that appear in storms, and of something ancient that has claimed these waters as its hunting ground since before recorded history. James and Sarah Mitchell were no strangers to the sea's moods. With over 20 years of sailing experience, they'd weathered storms from the Caribbean to the South China Sea. Their yacht, Morning Light, was their pride and joy, a 45-foot Hallberg Rossi equipped with every modern safety feature money could buy. But no technology can save you when ancient forces decide to claim what they believe is theirs. The day had started perfectly, too perfectly, as Sarah would later realize. The sky had been an unnatural shade of blue, the sea impossibly calm. Even the seabirds, usually abundant in these waters, were conspicuously absent. As they crossed into the Bay of Biscay, Sarah had noticed something odd. The water temperature reading on their instruments had been fluctuating wildly, jumping from normal to tropical levels within minutes. James was at the helm when the barometer began its dramatic plunge. The change was so rapid that the instrument's warning alarms sounded, something they'd never experienced before. The clouds that gathered weren't the usual dark gray of a storm system. They were almost green, swirling in patterns that seemed to defy natural weather movements. "Sarah!" James called down to his wife, who was checking their charts below. "We need to reef the sails now. Something's not right with this storm." As Sarah emerged from below deck, she froze momentarily. The horizon had disappeared, replaced by a wall of water and clouds that seemed to be watching them. Later, she would swear she saw faces in the wave patterns, hundreds of them, all turning to track their boat's movement. The wind hit them like a physical wall. It didn't build gradually, as storms usually do. It went from 5 knots to 50 in seconds. The sound it made wasn't the normal howl of wind through rigging. It was more like voices, crying out in languages that hadn't been spoken for centuries. As they fought to reduce sail, their movements practiced from years of experience, the first truly impossible thing happened. The water around the boat began to glow with a pale greenish light, not the normal bioluminescence they'd seen in tropical waters, but a sickly, pulsing radiance that seemed to be rising from the depths. The engine room flooding wasn't from a normal leak. When James went to check, the water pouring in through the seacocks was warm, almost hot, and it moved against gravity, crawling up the walls like it was alive. He slammed the engine room door shut, but not before seeing something long and pale, like a human arm, but wrong somehow, reaching through one of the seacocks. Their radio crackled to life, but instead of the reassuring voice of Coast Guard services, they heard a cacophony of distress calls. Some were in modern English, others in languages long dead. All were calling for help, describing the same things: warm water, green skies, and things rising from the deep. "Mayday! Mayday! This is the Mary Rose! Something's coming up from below!" They wear the faces of our dead. "No son las sirenas, son los antiguos, han vuelto." They look like us, but they're not. The messages overlapped. Decades of distress calls playing simultaneously, some from ships that had vanished in these waters generations ago. When Morning Light began to break up, it wasn't just from the waves. Something was pulling it apart from beneath. The hull didn't just crack, it was torn open like paper, and in the growing fissures, pale hands with too many fingers reached through, grabbing at anything they could reach. In the water, James and Sarah found themselves surrounded by an impossible warmth. The waves should have been frigid. This was the Bay of Biscay in a storm, but instead, it felt like bathwater. That's when they saw them clearly for the first time. Faces in the water, hundreds of them, all around them. Some were clearly ancient, wearing the remnants of clothing from centuries past, while others were more recent, still wearing modern sailing gear. All had the same pale, luminescent skin and eyes that reflected the green light from below like mirrors. The ghost ship that appeared wasn't just abandoned. It was a trap that had been laid and sprung countless times before. As they climbed aboard, Sarah noticed that the rope they'd used seemed to pull them up of its own accord, almost eagerly. The interior of the yacht was a museum of maritime tragedy. Each cabin held personal effects from different eras. A sextant from the 1800s still sat next to modern GPS equipment. The dinner laid out on the table wasn't just one meal. Each place setting was from a different time period, all somehow still perfectly preserved. As they ate from desperation, the radio in the ghost ship's cabin crackled to life. A child's voice came through. "Mommy, why is the water so warm?" Then a woman's scream, cut short. Then another voice, this one they recognized. It was James's voice from 10 minutes ago, calling Sarah to help with the sails. Through the portholes, they watched in horror as the pale figures began to climb the hull. Their movements were wrong, too fluid, too quick. Some still wore the tattered remains of clothing from when they were taken, naval uniforms from the Napoleonic Wars mixed with modern foul-weather gear. Their faces were the worst part, all identical expressions of serene welcome, like hosts greeting long-awaited guests. The note they found wasn't just a warning, it was a confession. The full text revealed a terrible truth. To whoever finds this vessel, leave immediately. They're not what they appear to be. They're the shepherds of the deep, ancient things that have been collecting souls since mankind first dared to sail these waters. They rise from the depths when storms rage, wearing the faces of the drowned. They mimic our forms, our voices, but they're not human. I've seen them change. The warm water is their digestive process beginning. They don't just take us. They absorb us, learn from us, become us. Each storm brings them a new harvest, and with each harvest, they become better at their hunt. The ship is their lure, and we are all part of their collection now. The faces you see in the water, we're still conscious, still aware, but we're part of them now. Forever part of the harvest. I'm sorry, but if you're reading this, you've already been chosen. Look at your skin. Is it starting to glow yet? Captain Thomas Wells, August 15th, 1987. P.S. The worst part isn't the drowning, it's the eternal hunger for more company. James looked at Sarah in horror as he noticed for the first time that her skin had begun to take on the same pale, luminescent quality as the figures outside. She smiled at him, but it wasn't her smile anymore. And as he felt the warmth beginning to spread through his own body, he realized it never had been Sarah who climbed aboard with him. They say on stormy nights in the Bay of Biscay, if you see a light in the distance and feel the water turn warm around your boat, it's already too late. The harvest never ends, and the collectors are always hungry for more souls to join their eternal gathering. Sleep well tonight, friends. And remember, if you're ever sailing and hear voices calling for help through your radio, ask yourself, are you hearing a rescue in progress, or are you hearing the bait being laid for the next harvest?
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more.